Hello, everyone. I'm really happy to find you today. It's summertime, and it's really exciting to see you again in another session about building cloud infrastructures. So today we're going to talk about Azure. We have been building infrastructures for AWS before, and this is the first time that we're going to build Azure architecture. So we're going to go through a brief introduction about uh, who I am, what we do at Brainboard. Then we jump into the technical part, and we're going to build an architecture together. So I'm Shafiq, the founder of Brainboard. I'm an engineer. I've been working in the industry now for more than 15 years, and I love the technical stuff. So I've been a DevOps engineer, developer, cloud architect, and now at Brainboard, I'm mainly driving the technical part. So Brainboard is a solution to visually build and manage cloud infrastructures. So as a reminder, what you are building is you have these two verticals always present. The first one, which is building systems, and the second one, managing cloud infrastructures. And today, the objective of our session today is to build an Azure hub and spoke architecture on Brainboard to get the Terraform code generated. And also, we're going to talk about the cross-environment deployment strategies. Like beyond creating just infrastructure, the most important thing is how you can maintain it, how you can build strategies on that, and also how everyone within a team or maybe within the organization can understand what you do and you can communicate effectively with everyone. This is the purpose of our session today. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. Tarek will be with me present today, and our CTO, Jeremy, as well. So if you have questions, ask them. If you need information from us, also ping anyone of us, and I will be taking breaks to answer the questions. So before we jump into building the cloud infrastructure, this is a reminder that I want to share with you. And as we talk about infrastructure as code, it's important to make it clear where the infrastructure as code fits in our workflow and in the workflow of building cloud infrastructures. So as we talk about automation, the infrastructure as code, which means the code, becomes the separator between two different words. So you have the word before having a valid code. And in the use case of today, we will be talking about Terraform, but it can be any other code. It can be Ansible, it can be Pulumi, it can be any other tool that you use for automation. So you have a life before getting into the code. And once you have the code, you're going to deploy it. And the life after is like quick because we have a lot of tools and the industry is quite mature in this area. So whatever you use, Jenkins, Azure DevOps, GitLab CI, GitHub Actions, or any other tool that you may use for deployment, it's going to take just a few minutes between the time you validate the code into the time when the code hits production. So the most important part where us cloud architects and DevOps engineers and even SREs spend most of our time is before having the code. And the purpose is getting as fast and as secure as possible from the specs into having a valid Terraform code in a clear way, and especially in a way that allows us to maintain the infrastructure, which involves different parts. The first, you need to design the infrastructure in most of the times, unless you are like, you just have few servers and you don't need a design. Then you need to translate this design into a code, whatever the code. Then you're going to test it, review it, document it. Documentation is important, especially if it's the main communication vector that you have within your company. Then you validate what you have done, and the validation may involve also different people, different teams, or maybe different departments if security need to validate any deployment. And once all these steps are done and the deployment and the code is validated, so now the code is ready to go into production and you can deploy it with one click. So this is a very important aspect to keep in mind. And this is like in this area where we'll be doing today. So we'll be building this infrastructure, and I will show you that we can deploy it and the different scenarios for deployment. But the most important part is how to get as fast and secure as possible into having a valid Terraform code. So I use Brainboard today because I'm the founder of Brainboard, and because also I use it every day to build my cloud infrastructures. And maybe you have seen it on LinkedIn. We keep posting about the infrastructure that we do. We love sharing with the community. This is what we are doing today, to share knowledge with the community, best practices. And also we want to learn from the community, teach and learn from the community. This is our goal at Brainboard. So this is the interface of Brainboard. And as we will be developing the hub and spoke architecture, I started by creating the first part. So here is the first part, which is the on-prem. And for the preparation of this session, I used the official documentation of Microsoft that I will share it with you later, but you can have it as a reference and you can go deeper if you want to understand deeply how things work. This first part, which is, I call it on-prem. So I designed it today. So this on-prem contains a resource group that contains a VNet that I call it on-prem with two subnets that both of them have a public IP. And this one I use it for management, and this one I use it as a gateway. So for the management, I just put a virtual machine inside, and I created the rule that I can connect with SSH into this virtual machine. So all the design I will be doing, you will be seeing live the Terraform code generated here on my right. And this is the purpose of the session today, that we will be building together the infrastructure from the design point of view, but also we'll be seeing how the Terraform code will be generated and how it works. And these are like simple architecture, and we can open any component to see what's the configuration. So maybe before we start, I just give you a refresher about how Brainboard works in a few minutes, few seconds maybe, and then we can zoom, we build together. So you have different way to start with Brainboard. You can either start with the templates. You can choose from different templates for any cloud provider that you use. You have the selector here. And maybe if you have time, I will show you how you can build your own templates and maintain them. The other way is to import any existing infrastructure that you have from repos or from the Terraform files, or start from scratch. And here you can start from scratch. Today I started from scratch. I built this first block and I create a version for it. I call it create on-prem VNet. So it's here. And you have on my left, in the left bar, all the resources for the cloud provider. So you can select any cloud provider here. Today, we're going to work on Azure, and I have all the resources available at Azure. These resources are also the resources that you find at Terraform. So it's a one-to-one mapping. Every resource here matches a specific version of the cloud provider and the Terraform parameters. And so, like designing the infrastructure, we're going to make it, we wanted to make it as easy and as smooth as possible.
Can you zoom it? Zoom it.
Yes. I will zoom later on the design and show also the different components. So we wanted building infrastructure to be as smooth as possible, and also like with a minimum effort without repeating yourself. So now I have this first part of the on-prem. Now I'm going to create another, I'm going to create a hub here. We're going to do it together. And I show you how we build the connection between both of them. And then I will show you like the code. We're going to go to the deployment and see all these aspects. So now I'm going to zoom a bit here. All right. First, I'm going to take a location. I put a location here, drag and drop it. So I can select, yes, I can keep it East US. This is a location, and now inside this location, I'm going to put a resource group. So these resource group is going to inherit directly from my location. It's going to inherit the location directly from my location. All right, just drag it here, my resource group. Yes, and I'm going to give it a name for this hub. I'm going to name it hub vnet RG and name it here. Okay, and you see in this configuration menu, these are all the parameters for my resource group. And yeah, a resource group doesn't contain a lot of parameters, but I will show you for more complex resources how it works. I'm going to save it. So once it is saved, you see the file, the Terraform file generated here. So I don't have to write the Terraform file, but I will be able to see it. So this is exactly what I want. Now I'm going to put other resources. I'm going to make it bigger because we're going to put a lot more stuff inside. Okay. So inside the resource group, now I'm going to add a virtual network. So the virtual network, you just search for virtual network. All right, it's here. I drag and drop it inside. So yeah, this is one of the great features of Brainboard is when you design, Brainboard will detect that you are, what kind of action you are doing and suggest the parameters that you want to fill. I keep by default, so I will be having my configuration. So it added automatically the resource group. It added automatically the location. For the name, I put hub vnet, and I'm gonna give the same name here for the resource name. And for the address space, I'm gonna use this address space here. And by default, I have two tags. This is Brainboard injecting two tags that I will be able to find which is which. The first one is the architecture UID, where I'm building my architecture. And the second one is the environment within which I'm building my architecture. So that's why you see the two tags here. And they are present in all the resources. And one of the best practices is using tags. So I highly advise you to use tags. So you have an easy way to do them. All right. So now inside my virtual network, I'm going to create subnets. So this is the hub, and in the hub and spoke topology, you have, let's say you have an on-prem, then you have a hub that is connected to the on-prem, and the hub contains all the shared workloads that we want. Yeah, they are shared. And if we want a separate workload, we can create a spoke, which is connected to this hub that contains this specific workload, in a way that we can isolate specific workloads in spoke. So the most important part is the hub, as it can get connected into both works, the one that I have on my prem, if I have maybe sensitive things, and the one that run the workloads in the spoke. So to add subnets here, I'm going to add 3 subnets. So I look for the subnet here. Okay. I'm going to add the first subnet. Let's say put it here. Okay. And the first subnet, let's say we add it. It's a hub, but we call it gateway subnet. And Brainboard automatically added for me the resource group name and the VNet, so I don't have to. And I have to give it an address, the networking address space. So this is for the gateway. I give it this address 24/27. And that's it. Oh, okay. I save it now. And I will create another subnet here. And this second subnet, I'm going to use it for the management. And I call it here hub management. Okay. And the difference between this name and this name, this is the resource name that will be generated here. And this is then, and this name will be present. This is the what is officially expected by Azure. And I add this, and I can also put here a name, like I can put this hub management subnet. And the first one, which is a gateway. Okay, I'm gonna rename it gateway subnet. Let's save it. And I'm gonna create the third subnet, which is for the DMZ. I'm gonna put it here with a different networking for my DMZ. And I'm gonna call it DMZ. And yes, I was explaining that in this configuration menu, you have all the parameters that are supported by the cloud provider for any specific resource. In my case, it's a subnet. So here I have all what I need. The first part are the mandatory one, and the second part are the optional. This is like the way you configure your resources, and you will see at the end how the Terraform code will be generated. I just realized here that I didn't put networking for this one and for the other one as well. We're gonna put it together. And here I'm gonna give it 32 27. Okay, and then save it. And I add a networking also for this one. Address prefix 10.0.0.64/27. Okay, so let's validate and let's have a look on the Terraform code generated. So my Terraform code, and you can read it both ways, reading the diagram and seeing the code. So I have my resource group that contains my virtual network, and my virtual network contains a subnet as I configured them. Okay, that's perfect. Now I'm going to create a network interface, and this network interface I'm going to put it in the management that allows me to get connected into the management part and access my machines or my hardware. So I add it in the subnet here. Okay. And I'm going to configure now for the name. I'm going to call it hub network interface simply. Okay. For the name, give it this name. And now for the IP configuration. So the first one, I'm going to call it for the name. Let's call it NIC1. For the NIC1, for the subnet ID, I'm going to say the subnet. This when you hover here, when you use, yes, you have the list of all available resources. I can show you this. When I hover, it highlights the resources. So I want this subnet. I select it here. All right. And now I put the private IP address allocation. I'm going to put it dynamic here. Okay, and this is all I need now. Okay, perfect. And for my tags, okay, I have my 2 tags in place. So now I'm going to save my NIC, and I can now go and check. This is exactly what I wanted. Perfect. So now we're going to move into, so as we created this NIC in the management, we're going to create a virtual machine that inside the subnet with this NIC that allow us also to be used for the management part. So now I'm going to create a virtual machine. All right. I drag and drop this virtual machine here. Okay, I'm gonna call it hub VM as well. In the name hub. And now in the network interface IDs, I'm gonna use the interface that I created. And you see, like, this is really great that Brainboard is suggesting to me all the resources that are present with their exported attribute. So I don't need to guess. I just look for the interface. Okay, this is the interface I'm looking for. And when I use the ID, as it's the ID here, you just click on it and it's configured. So that easy. For the VM size, so I'm going to use, okay, let's go here, VM size. Let me choose the size of the VM. Okay, okay, and just getting the size of the VM. Maybe I think I put it into, I'm going to save this. I think I have it in my variables. No, I can put here the VM size because we may use it later. Okay, now you just keep it string here, save it. Okay, and now in my VM, I'm going to use this variable. Okay, this is not, okay. This is not what I wanted. No. Okay, the interface that I wanted is this one, .id. And for the VM size, I'm going to use the variable. Yes, perfect. I have my variable here. And for the storage disk, for the disk that I will use, so I'm going to use, let's say, Ubuntu server. What's this? So for the name, I'm going to call it disk 1. For the machine, okay. For caching, I'm going to use read write. For the creation option, I'm going to use from image. And the disk type, okay, I'm going to use a standard LRS. And you can put any value that matches what you want. That's fine. So, and I'm good with all the options, and I can check here. Okay, my taggings, everything is set correctly. All right, so now I'm going to save my VM. And if I go down, I can see the VM. So what I can do now is, as I'm building more and more resources, it's one of the good best practices is to validate that what you are doing works. And the best, especially when you are working with Terraform, it's better that you validate as you go and you don't pile the entire infrastructure and you don't know how to debug it. This is one of the best practices. So what I suggest is that you do plan regularly. I'm doing it here in Brainboard, but you can, this is one of the best practices, even if you are developing in your local environment on your laptop, keep doing it. It helps you spot the errors at early stage. So here I'm going to run the plan. And the variable doesn't have, yes, this is perfect because it tells me that I didn't put any value for my variable. Okay, so here I'm gonna put the VM size. Okay, my VM size, I'm going to give it a default value, DS1, standard DS1, or if, sorry, I select this one and a different value, this, and I update it. Okay, so now if I run my Terraform again, the plan, it will detect that I have the right value for the variable, and it will show me what will be deployed. So again, this is what's happening now. Brainboard is creating an environment, execution of my environment on the fly, converting all my graphics into a Terraform file, doing the action and giving me the output in real time. So here I see, okay, my plan is green, so all the code, the design that I've done is valid. Okay, now I keep going, I keep building, and I keep doing this this way. So I'm going to zoom again on what I was building here. And by the way, as we are going, maybe if there are questions, I will be happy to answer. Otherwise, we can keep going.
Yeah. People want to see the CAF module.
Yes. Yes. So, all right. So the CAF modules is huge. There you have a lot of modules. What I advise you to do, I started building CAF modules myself. For example, here I can look for CAF. And I have some of them here. For example, I created one for identity. I can share it with you, with the community. So this is, okay, I make the design bigger. This is one of the most used and complete one. So you have, sorry, okay, you have here different parts. You have the virtual network that contains subnet, VM, and disks. And so this is like, it contains part of the landing zone. You have it here. And the code is also complex as it represents different parts. I will show you that. So here, I splitted my infrastructure into different files. So for the network, I have all my networking stuff, and I use, for example, loops. I use the for each here to be able to loop on the infrastructure. Maybe I can show it to you in the graph. It's better. Okay, so here I have the groups. Let's say I want to see the network group. Okay, this is my network group, and when I open one of the resources, the virtual network, I have configured a for each here that loops over my region and creates in every region this CAF module. So, and what I was doing, the session of today is also creating a landing zone from the CAF. So, and we will convert it later into a module. If I want to select, for example, the key vault, I can select it. Okay, I have here my key vault. This is the files that contains my key vault. And if I want to understand, to check what the configuration is, I have all this. What I advise you to do as well is, as a good start, and we can do it live now, Terraform CAF mod Azure CAF. Yes, you go inside the official repo of the CAF, and you can import any module inside Brainboard. Let's say, for example, I want to import, all right, from compute, I want to import container registry. So all these files, I just give the URL into Brainboard and import this into Brainboard. And I call it, I'm going to take the last one. So now Brainboard will pull all this information from the CAF, generate the graphics for me, and also import the code. So here is, these are modules. That's why you see them like this, private module. They are imported here, by the way. Okay, and I have like, this is how it looks like, this module. I can see the code in the deploy part. So I have all the code here that is generated. And you can do it for any module you want to import. So this is of great help. And I personally do it a lot. I just go into the modules, the one that I want to work with. For example, AKS. Last time I did it on still in compute, and it was AKS, and I can import this AKS into Brainboard and do the same thing here. Call it compute AKS, and I import it. All right, now I'm able to visualize that my AKS contains a cluster with a node pool and names, some random strings, and this is a module for diagnostics. So I have all the parameters for the module, diagnostics. And you can do it, for all the modules that you want to import. Is there any other question, or we can keep going maybe on the use case of today?
There is a question here. Will this support Azure Virtual Desktop architecture as well?
Yes, it supports any kind of architecture. Everything, the golden rule is everything supported by Terraform will be supported by Brainboard. Like you have all the repos and all the resources, play with it as you want. So my purpose of the session of today is really to build with you a cloud infrastructure and share about the best practices of building infrastructure and Terraform. So if you want to more understand how Brainboards work, I will be happy to schedule a meeting and talk with it or ping directly. So he's available in the chat, and you can discuss Brainboard. So yes, but everything is supported. All right, so I think we planned 45 minutes. We are already 32 minutes into the session. What makes sense now is we finish this, and I wanted really to show you and share with you the best practices of building strategies of deployment through different environments. This is like what makes sense, because one of the use case is you build infrastructure and you are more likely to repeat the same pattern for different clients or maybe in different regions when you deploy in these regions, and to show you how you can build best practices and how you can build a strategy of working with the environment. So the last part that is remaining, so we're gonna just put the virtual network gateway, and we are done with this hub, and then we can move to the other part. So now I'm gonna add a public IP. Okay, I'm gonna make it bigger here, even bigger. All right, so here I'm gonna add a public IP. Okay. I'm gonna add a public IP in the gateway subnet here, yes. Or maybe, okay, I'm gonna put it here, and then we link it. So in this configuration menu, I'm gonna call it the public IP. I'm gonna call it hub. Oops. Hub public IP. In the name, I'm gonna put the same. And in the allocation method, I'm gonna put it dynamic as well. And okay, that's it. This is I have my tags, perfect. Okay, I'm gonna save this. So now I'm gonna create a virtual network gateway. So I'm gonna create network gateway, yes, virtual network gateway. And this virtual network gateway, I'm gonna put it in the gateway subnet here. Okay. And call it hub vnet gateway. And you put the name here in the SQ. I'm going to put VPN gateway 1 of type, of course, VPN. And this is one of the tricky points of working with Azure is in the types, Azure expects the first character to be capital letter and not the rest of the characters. So pay attention to these small details, because sometimes you have a Terraform plan failing and you do not understand why it fails just because the type is a VPN, but the V is not capital letter. I have done this mistakes a lot of times, so you can save time by doing it beforehand. So in the IP configuration, I give it a name. I can keep the same name. And in the private IP allocation, I gonna put it dynamic. In the subnet ID, I put this subnet that I'm in. So the subnet, which is for the management. Okay, this one. All right, I select this one. Subnet ID, public. And yes, for the public IP address, I'm gonna use public, the one that is here. Okay, and I select it. And as you see here, when I select, Brainboard created this link between the two resources. So how do you read it? I'm gonna put it here to make it easier. And zoom, how do you read it? Is that this virtual network gateway that is in this subnet uses in the field public IP address ID and information from the public IP. So this is how the information works. All right, this is the public network gateway. Now the last part that we're gonna do is we are gonna create a gateway connection in both ways, between the on-prem to the hub and between the hub and the on-prem, to allow the communication between both of them. So here, I'm gonna put this here to make more space. And I'm gonna add gateway connection. Yes, exactly, network connection. And I'm gonna put it in this VNet. It's better that I put it here. So, and I just call it hub. The communication is from the hub to the on-prem connection. Okay. And in the name, I'm going to give it the same name. So now the type is VNet to VNet. And this is, again, important to put it the right way. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And the virtual network gateway ID is the hub VNet. This is the hub VNet gateway, this one. Okay, I'm going to zoom a bit. It should be here. Gateway, yes, this, okay, I'm zooming here. This gateway dot ID. Perfect. So, and Brainboard created the link between both of them, as I told you. And I need to add a shared key. So I can add it here. Shared key. I can use a variable as well as, I call it shared key. And okay, Brainboard created the variable on the fly as I added it. And I'm pretty good with this. So now maybe yes, that's fine. And for the variable, I just add a default value to have the plan working. I just copy paste one of the shared keys that I have. Okay. Or you can put random string here if you want. Or you can call it shared key, the default. That's right. Okay. We of type string. All right. And now we're going to put in the virtual, in the other part, in this on-prem part, we're going to put the same gateway that will link us to the other. So I'm going to add a gateway connection here. And this one, I call it from the on-prem into the hub connection. I give it the same name here, of type Again, the same type, VNet with V capital letter to VNet. And the virtual gateway ID. So for the virtual gateway ID, I'm going to use on-prem one. So it's on-prem VNet gateway. Okay, let's call it gateway. Yes. Okay, I'm gonna add it just after. I'm gonna get the name of this virtual network gateway ID. Gateway. All right, it is called on-prem VPN gateway. Okay. VPN. Yes, this one. It's more that one. All right, perfect. So here, and for the virtual network ID, I put this, and for the peer virtual network, so here, yes, I'm gonna specify the hub network gateway that is called hub VNet gateway. This gateway. All right. And now I save it. So like now I have built my architecture. I can put this here and put that here and change maybe the connector to something that, okay, that works this way. So now I have created my on-prem architecture with a hub, and we are running out of time, so we can see in all cases the other part. And at the same time, I have my Terraform code that I can inspect. Okay, all the resources that I've added at the end are here. So I can see everything connected, everything generated correctly. And I can do the last plan to validate the architecture that I'm doing. And then I will show you like the other part of splitting, also continuous splitting the code into different parts that allows you to generate in the best practices different Terraform files, each for specific, that contains specific resources. Yes, I have problem with the link, which is, yeah, the IP address is associated, which is, okay, I'm gonna fix it later. But now to move forward with our architecture, I'm gonna now create different files here. So I can, for example, select these resources, 2, 3 resources, and I'm gonna call them like this is the hub VNet. Created new group, and you can see it here. Like every time I create a group, you can see it here. And if I select the vnet.tf file, it contains only the resource group and the virtual network. And I advise you when you work with Terraform, especially if you are building Azure architecture that will get complex, is to split them into different Terraform files to know which is which. And you can keep doing this more and more. The last part that I wanted to show before we run out of time is now that I have built this architecture, that I have all the components here, I can see them, I have my Terraform code now, and I'm working in one environment. So here I'm working maybe in, I call it training, but you may be working in development or test or whatever the environment. And now I want to promote this architecture into another environment, because I want to just have to push this into deployment. And I can select, you can do that quickly. Here, for example, I select the target environment. Let's say I want to first deploy it into staging to make sure that everything works correctly. And now I have a very critical and important option, which means I can create a standalone, which means the two architecture are going to live separately, or I can keep them synchronized, synced. So when I do that, any graphical modification that I do to one environment, it will be reflected. So here I'm in staging. I open this architecture, and I have the sync link here that this architecture stage in staging is synced with training, which means any graphical modification that I do to one environment, let's say, for example, just take this out, like to do a visually and graphically different action, a visible action. Now, if I move into the other replica, I'm supposed to see the same changes. So I'm in training, and I have the same changes. So yes, it refreshes, and I have the same changes. But my two environment can be isolated with environment variables, and this is what I want. I want variables in one environment to be different from the others. That's why, by the way, I created variables, for example, for the VM size, and I can create another variable here, for example, environment1 variable, and save it. So in a way that when I switch into the other environment, staging, and I open my variables here, okay, I'm not supposed to see this variable, even if the diagram is the same. So what I wanted to say here is like building strategy across different environments is really important, especially if you do not want to repeat yourself. And one of the open source tools that does this greatly is TerraGrant as well, that you combine it with Terraform. And we tried to replicate the same principle of TerraGrant in Brainboard, which means you have different environment. You can create the same architecture, the same design across all of them, separate them by variables, and you can manage them all in one action. So this is, I'm really happy that we went through at least creating the hub and doing this part of replicating the architecture through environments. Do we have any questions, Tarek or Jeremy, that we can answer?
No, actually, we answered everything on the chat already.
Perfect. That's really perfect. So thanks a lot for your presence today. I'm really happy that we spent together more than 45 minutes building Azure cloud infrastructure. So enjoy your summer and see you soon in another session to build another architecture, maybe for Azure or for another cloud provider. Take care and enjoy your summer. Goodbye.